This lesson is going to look at proper sequencing from the ground up. On the right we have Albert Pujols, on the left we have one of the DBAT students. And what I want to look at here is just the technique of making sure that we're sending energy from the ground up in our swing and making sure that the hips are driving the hands during the swing. So we want to go ahead and take both hitters into toe touch where they're going to make their decision to swing or not. A couple of things I really want to note here, and we're going to look at the differences between our amateur hitter and Albert Pujols. Number one, at toe touch with Pujols, we want to notice that the back knee has begun to pinch in just a little bit because he's decided he's going to take the swing. So we need to release the anchor of the back foot so that during hip rotation, the hips aren't having to pull our back leg. And you'll notice that Albert Pujols, all he does, the back knee pinches in. This empowers the front hip to go into rotation, and the back foot will eventually be pulled off the ground by the front hip as we tend to kind of lock out and in rotation, just because the hips are more powerful than the back foot in this position. So we'll go back to toe touch. If we look at our amateur hitter, the back knee is essentially still sitting over the back foot in this position. Now what this is going to immediately cause is a delay into the weight transfer into rotation. So what we're going to see from our hitter, number one, the weight's still concentrated on the entire foot. If we look at Albert Pujols right here, we'll see that the weight on the back foot has began to roll to the inside of the back foot, which has allowed the kinetic chain to work and allow the back knee to start to pinch in just a little bit, which is going to allow him to release the weight off of the back leg into the front leg into rotation. Our amateur hitter is just real stiff and real flat-footed on his back leg, thus the delay into his weight transfer and rotation is going to stop at this point. So let's just go frame by frame with both hitters, and we'll watch Pujols first. So immediately, as the front heel begins to lower, we see the back heel raised at this position here. And it's actually off the ground right here. What I want you to notice is when Pujols' back heel begins to raise off the ground, his back arm is still here. His shoulders are still going to be relatively squared up to the pitcher or turned away from the pitcher slightly. This means that his lower body is firing before his upper body. Thus the kinetic chain is going to work in the proper sequence of events. So we're going to be able to deliver energy from our hips up through our waist, out through our arms, into our hands at this point. So let's take a look at the amateur hitter, and I just want to track from this point on the back elbow and the back foot. So if I look here, I want to see what's changing the greatest amount. And the heel has finally made its way, started to work its way off the ground at this point. Now the difference between Pujols and our amateur hitter is obviously this amount of space with the back elbow. What this signifies to me is simply that shoulder rotation has begun before hip rotation has begun. I can't expect my hips to turn when I'm flat-footed at this point, and our hitter spends too many frames being flat-footed here. As the foot hits here, we want to immediately release up. So what happens is by the time our hitter has began to allow his hips to go in rotation, the shoulders and the hands have already begun to make their move to the ball. Thus the lower body is completely eliminated from the equation. This is a powerful young hitter here. The other thing I really want to look at in the sequence of events is exactly the front foot on both hitters as we enter into contact and kind of in rotation. First thing I want to look at with Pujols is I just want to watch where the weight will travel on the front foot as we get into contact. As we begin to lock the front side out, we'll notice the weight will carry over to the side outside of the front foot. Our amateur hitter here, we're going to notice that as he gets ready to go into contact, the weight is actually going to stay off of his front heel. So if we never put the front heel on the ground, there's no way, right before contact, you can see we're not able to lock out the front leg and the front heel's lifting off the ground. So the energy that we're trying to deliver from our back side into our front side is never going to take place because his front hip is very reliant on this front foot being connected to the ground. If my front foot's not connected to the ground, there's no way I can transfer energy from the ground up in this position. So what we need to have happen with this hitter is pretty simple here. When he gets into his negative move, when the front foot begins to lift, he immediately needs to allow the weight to come off of to the inside of the back foot, which will allow the back knee to pinch in just a little bit, which will allow for a little bit smoother transition into rotation. If you're able to start picking up his front heel at this position and hold the hands back just a little bit more, then we might be okay in this position. He's got about 2 or 3 frames here where his bat stays perfectly still. If he could continue to work the hands opposite, away from the ball just a little bit longer here, as we try to transfer some type of energy or transfer weight to the front foot and the front hip eventually, then we might be able to get the proper sequence of events going down. But he's going to have to get the right heel up before the back arm goes into the slot. And through all of this, he's going to have to learn to get the energy to the front foot by lowering the heel. He's got to be able to go toe to heel and make that front side firm so that we can get fully through rotation, which we don't do here. So we've got to be able to get the hips fully through rotation, and that should be able to get us locked out instead of this real bent position, which just signals that we didn't transfer the energy in our lower body. So I want to make sure that at contact we've got that front side firm, the heel's on the ground, and then we've rotated up to the toe. Even if that means that we come off the ground, that'll be okay.